What's up, everybody? Before we get started, we just want to say today's episode is brought to you by Manscaped, our go-to men's below-the-waist grooming products. Manscaped new products alert, because we have some new thing. It's called the Ultra Smooth Package. And, everyone needs to make sure, the bottom, the below the waist is always ultra smooth. So coming with the Ultra Smooth, we got the crop shaver, the crop exfoliator, and the crop gel. It's time to crop that bush of yours because, when we're growing up, and we're still aging, it's always going to be bushy down there.
It's like a lion's mane,
Yeah, it's a lion's mane. Akuma Street Fighter 5, that's pretty much what it is. Maybe it's red, black, who knows? But, we got to get right to the roots with a discount code just for you. Remember, 20% off, free shipping at manscaped.com with the code TKO. So the Ultra Smooth Package, it's a 3-by-step process, right? The first one you got to use is the crop exfoliator. That's going to help make sure it's smooth and clear and keep the skin around, you know what I mean? And then we got to place the crop gel, right? Because when it comes down to it, you got to make sure you put something to protect yourself with. And then we call it the crop shaver. And, the slogan of the line, "It's time to shave," was designed for shaving the groin area with confidence. That's the most important part, right? We got to make sure our self-esteem is good, and Manscaped got us with that. So other than that, make sure you get 20% off at free shipping with the code TKO at manscaped.com. That's 20% off, free shipping with the code TKO at manscaped.com. Smooth it out, fellas, with Manscaped. Your balls will thank you. So what's up, everybody? We are back with another episode of Triple Stink KO. Who knows? But we are here with myself, Maximilian, and Matt McMuscles. And how are you guys doing?
I'm doing all right, but Max is a little bit under the weather, unfortunately.
Yeah, I must have pissed off some sort of deity because for the past month or so, me and my family have been going through absolute hell. Everybody, I've been sick as hell. I'm pretty good enough today to talk a bit, so at least I wanted to keep the podcast going as smoothly as it possibly could. But my apologies if I'm not talking a ton or if I sound a little weird. I've been going through some extra dank over the past few weeks.
It's those deities in Asura's wrath. They're fighting you back.
Yeah, it's also pissed off some rollback god.
It's always that one time when you get sick or something bad happens, it just keeps coming in tangents, right? It's like a combo, right? Nonstop.
Yes, everything is going to be a fighting game euphemism for how my body is getting ravaged.
It's getting rushed down by like all these diseases and things.
Yeah, but so unfortunately you are sick, and well, at least when you are sick, what you can do is watch tournaments. And this is what we're going to be talking about for today's topic, are just, I guess, tournaments in general, tournaments in history. Should people go to tournaments? What to expect at tournaments, and just the tournament culture regardless, right? I would say, what are some of the tournaments that you guys have been to before?
Well, my section is very short, so before Max gets into his, but I once or twice I went to a local thing here in Montreal, very small scale, and not much success. Just in general. One thing about me is that I know where my skill ceiling is, and it's always been at the same place. So actually participating, not so much, but I did. Eventually, I was just I have to go to Evo at least once or twice, before I die, right? So because you just read about it and hear about it all the time online and stuff about how Evo is so unique on this scale and in Vegas and stuff. So I eventually did a couple of years ago. I'm trying to forget when, 2016, 2017, maybe 2018 as well. Experienced a little panel by some group. Video games. It was okay. It was actually really hype. It was actually one of the most fun panels I've been to. But and I've talked about it in an episode before, but just going to the Evo finals in the big arena and seeing the shit on the main screen and experiencing that that's kind of it in a nutshell for me. But
was it at Mandalay Bay for you, Matt?
Yeah, I think the last year I went, it was in Mandalay Bay.
Okay. Just making sure, because it's Evo has been spread around so many different parts of like Vegas over the years. So I'm like, that's how I think of it. I'm like, wait, this year we were down at like the LVH, and this other year we were someplace else.
The Mandalay Bay Arc.
Yes.
Basically type stuff.
We've been on a good streak for Mandalay Bay. So, I think they just have a good deal over there. But I would say, Evo is definitely like a big tournament for anyone to want to go to. Even before it got so big to Vegas, it even started like at just a random small arcade. Like the first one I went to was before it was even called Evo. It was called B5, like Battle to the Bay series, and that was in Folsom, California. Folsom. It was at some kind of like mom and pop's arcade. From what I remember,
I thought you were gonna say in the bathroom.
I mean, they had tournaments in the bathroom before. Just saying, melty blood. What can I say? But yeah, I would say it's crazy how how much things have evolved from like going from this like really small tournament, or maybe from somebody's like garage, into like big scale tournaments in like Las Vegas. It's kind of nice to see where gaming has come from. But in general, I would say I've been playing for over like 21 years, and the first tournament I've been to was actually a major. I went to my arcade at like 10 a.m. because I wanted to play some video games at 10 a.m. and there was like 50 people waiting outside at the arcade. And then I'm like, whoa, why is there so many people here? And they said, we're going to New Jersey for a tournament. And
we're all fitting in one car.
Yeah. Well, yeah, pretty much some people took cars and some people took trains. So we just took the New Jersey Transit to get there. It was called 8 on the Break. Arcades still exist up to this day, and they still have tournaments, I think, for the most part as well too, like kind of smaller ones. And then it was called East Coast Championship 5. And I got 5th place in Mars Capcom 1 and Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. And after that, it just got me so hooked on and so addicted to just wanting to keep going to tournaments and playing just different competition like around America. So I would say that's kind of like what made me want to go out to more tournaments.
Cool. What about you, Max?
Echo sort of a similar story. Like the big tournaments that I've gone to, and especially over the past 10 years, has definitely been Evo. Evo is always like a constant focus. I still haven't had a chance to even go to something like Combo Breaker, unfortunately, but I was there when it was called Ultimate Fighting Game Tournament, and it was run by Adam Hart Keats, and this was when him and Rick were sort of working together. That's the last one I went to, but I specifically was there at that time frame because it sort of coincided with the fact that a couple blocks away, Iron Galaxy was there, and I was literally working on KI and KI trailers like leading up to the tournament dates, and then I would go to the tournament to commentate KI. That's been a lot of my tournament experience over the past 10 years, especially is because I'd have so many responsibilities at each tournament that I had to eventually just stop playing because I would get so disappointed with myself when I wouldn't do good because I have all these other things that I have to do, and I hadn't had a chance to practice, and I was busy 2 weeks making enough content for the YouTube channel, and I was like, oh God, like now I'm just asked at whatever games I signed up for. But for me, it actually goes all the way back to technically 1995, and in 1995, is the first, I didn't even realize it, but I was essentially going to a local, a weekly local at a rec room in where I grew up, and it was a Killer Instinct. And believe it or not, there'd be like, I'm trying not to like overthink how many people it was, but there'd be arguably 20 to 30 kids to teenagers that would be playing KI because KI was so big. So they would have a Super Nintendo, and then people would rent out every single Super Nintendo, and KI would be in every single one, and then people would just be playing. I don't think it had a really good structure. It was more like arcade style, but everyone showed up to the same spot at the same time, right? And just like jammed on each other. And I was like the king of KI for 2 straight months. I like never lost. And eventually it was cool to see the people around me just eventually get better because I was the bad guy, right? Yeah, you have to realize that if you're in a
People
tournament,
don't like
you're the villain.
yes, if you're in a
People don't
tournament
like
situation and you like can't be beat, you are the enemy of the people. So everyone almost wants to see you lose, type of thing. So I got to experience that like sort of firsthand, right? That everyone, man, people popped off so hard on me when I eventually started losing, man. It was brutal. But outside of that, yeah, I think, and I was like maybe 10 or 11 years old. But when I was like 13-ish, Tekken 3 came out, and I went to a couple tournaments for Tekken 3 that were at like game stores and stuff like that. And I never did really well, but I always got, because these guys were like in their 20s, they were ancient creatures from the dark times, right? That still were standing on their husks of bodies, these 20-year-olds. And they would all compliment me and stuff like, wow, this kid's really good. Like, it's crazy to see this kid's really good. I always appreciated that sort of, like admiration that you would get from people that were a bit older that like could recognize like, hey, this kid's really good at this stuff. So
yeah, like more supportive.
Exactly. And it wasn't just like, I beat this kid's ass, So I appreciated that. That actually was one of the things that encouraged me to continually get better at like an arcade stick with Marvel vs. Capcom 1. And I didn't really go to many tournaments for Marvel 1, but there was definitely a very like, when you're at the arcades, it's a very tournament-like situation because you want to stay on that machine and it's costing you money, right? And you're costing other people money to continually play. So I wanted to get better at that, right? So a lot of my quote-unquote tournament experience to start off actually began when I was like 10 with Killer Instinct on Super Nintendo, believe it or not.
Yeah,
that's cool.
I was going to ask if it was arcade or Super Nintendo because I thought in the back of my head, I was like, I bet it was the Super Nintendo version for some reason. That's crazy. That's weird.
No, but yeah, I would say that's like such a cool thing with like the fact that you have 10-year-olds popping off against each other.
I was definitely one of the younger ones. Right. Once again, it was definitely that situation. It was, like I said, it was a lot of teenagers. So like 15 to 16-year-olds that were, that were definitely popping off quite a bit. And I was this like 10 to 11-year-old, it was because Killer Instinct was the coolest thing in the world, can't help it.
Like legally, you shouldn't have even been allowed to play Killer Instinct at 10.
Exactly.
So criminal over here going against all the rules playing. Because I think KI on the Super Nintendo is rated teen, but the arcade version is.
Yeah, the KI is weird. Like they've all been in a weird variety of teen to M ratings. Like Killer Instinct when it came out recently was teen, but then the definitive edition was M. It's very weird, man. And if it's like M, it's like, why couldn't they just have made Mira's blood red? Shit. Anyway.
No, but I would say just in general, so I think what we all have in common here is that we all went to EVO, right? And for a lot of people that loves fighting games and always wanted to attend to a tournament, should you guys go to EVO? And then I would say, in my opinion, at least now, there's so much stuff to do at EVO now, right? It's not even just a fighting game tournament anymore. It's a fighting game convention. So obviously you have your tournaments, you have, you can spectate and watch all the matches going on with all these different games. There's a community area where you could bring up, you could run side tournaments or just like BYOC, bring your own casuals. And then there's also the vendors. So much vendors with like Gaming Generation, Bait, and all these other brands that are just there trying to sell like evil exclusive products, right? And also just like cool stuff in general where people just love to buy stuff at a convention. And then also the panels, right? So many different panels. I think it's like 2 days worth of panels. And
also like new games, like new in development games will show up there. I remember when the last time I went and I just see Max and Max is like goes by me and he's like, sorry, I gotta go over here. And he's playing like, God, I think it was Dragon Ball Z had like a setup or something.
Yeah.
It was either Dragon Ball Z or something else. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you go. And I think you were playing with Xavier Woods.
I was playing with Xavier, yeah.
That's what it was. And like, that's the really, like, for me specifically, that's like super fun stuff just to see, like, new games. They're all fighting games or like fighting game adjacent. Sometimes you'll see in the indie area, there's like beat 'em ups or some action games sometimes. But it was just really exciting to see that it's like the first time I go, it's blossomed into like a whole convention because it makes sense. The first time I went to like an actual WrestleMania, they're like, all these people are here for this big event that's just to see the event, but there's all these people that are willing to do other stuff. So have WrestleCon the same weekend. So there's all these other wrestling promotions, smaller ones, and there's like convention space and there's panels, and it makes complete sense. And I'm like super glad that that exists in Evo like nowadays. Like, I'm not sure, do other tournaments, like, because I don't know, do other tournaments like CEO or Combo Breaker have that same sort of vibe where there's like other things you can do? That's
what I was going to ask is like, Justin, according to your recollect, I'd say I call it the con arc, right? When tournaments at one point, not at one point, over a gradual period of time, started becoming conventions, right? Where they weren't just fighting game tournaments anymore. And it's just like, wow, this just makes sense. Like, it's funny that there's all this stuff now for essentially people that aren't in tournament or might have like had very little time dealing with the tournament part of it. And now they get to do all this other stuff. That was the thing that always made Evo appealing, because once the tournament part is over, what's left? Vegas. You know, you have all the casinos, you have the entirety of Las Vegas at your fingertips, right? So I'm trying to think back. I'm going back to like when I was going to CEO like 2014 or maybe 2015. And even at that point, it wasn't full like con arc yet, you know? It was still like a little bit. There was still some vendors. There were still some people doing some things outside of just hosting tournament stuff. But where was the moment for you, Justin, where you might have like seen that like, oh yeah, tournaments are turning into conventions, and this is now like, because I think maybe it was Combo Breaker for me where I really started to see it like switch over, even though I didn't go there.
So I would say Evo definitely showcases the most when it comes down to a convention. I would say Combo Breaker is at a point where they can be a considered a fighting convention, but the one thing it's like that makes it different, I would compare Evo as like it's the E3, right? While Combo Breaker is more of like the PAX, where there's vendors there, you know, there's tournaments, but it's also meant for the community because it's 24 hours. So people are just playing fighting games for 24 hours in the same venue the whole time. And then there's in the alley with the artist alley and the vendors that's only open during the day, and obviously the tournament's happening during the day, but there's also so much stuff for like people that are not in tournaments anymore to do, like auction tournaments, right, where they have Killer Instinct auction tournaments or Marvel's Capcom 3 auction tournaments, and even just random side games that are just there and they're running a tournament for. So it's just at that point where I would say Combo Breaker is definitely part of the whole con arc, and CEO is definitely is more of a entertainment con arc, because always Jabili always try to puts in wrestling, right? Wrestling's in the element where it ties in with the CEO with AEW that on 2019. So that one's like more of just like the entertainment, like flexing and like con arc right there for sure.
Because I really want to go to CEO eventually in the future. Like, I'm not like super interested in going to cons like this year. Just like I want to give it a bit more time and stuff. But Combo Breaker's happening like, well, as of the time of this recording, it's happening like now-ish. And what's cool about being in Chicago, I've already seen our good friend Ketchup like finally gets to go to Galloping Ghost. So even something in Chicago, like outside the con space, like, you know, Chicago, there's stuff to do. There's places to go. And I would always recommend like go there to Galloping Ghost. We've talked about it a bit before, but like for Vegas, I don't know about you guys, but like outside the E3, outside of Evo, I can't do Vegas anymore. It's just too much. Everything is there, and I can still smell the casinos, like that smell that they have.
Old cigarette smell.
It's old cigarette smell, but when I think of that smell, I also think of like Max, oddly enough, because we always wind up having dinner or whatever. And but I would say like if people do decide to go to Evo one time, it's like you have to be prepared for the huge markup on everything. You have to be prepared for Uber and taxi drivers taking you for a fucking ride. Like they overcharge so much to go to anywhere and stuff. And it's like, but you can just stay at your hotel. You can just go to the convention space. You can buy a Cody body pillow from Zonk Knuckle if they show up to offer those again. You can see a cosplayer or two. There's the cosplayer from Japan, Non-Summer Jack, who showed up at Evo to do like a little booth signing thing, and I'm like, that's so cool. Like this is such a kind of cosplayer celebrity, and they're coming all the way to Evo just there because it's like there's going to be my some of my fan base is going to be here, so why not? And you're already in Vegas, but you have to be careful about how much money you have to budget properly for Evo, like because the first
Evo's
time
expensive.
the first time I went, I was just like, okay, yeah. And then like I look at like, I'm looking to go home. I look at my finance. I'm like, no, that was rough.
I got like a personal Evo hack that me and Jessica would use every once in a while. If it was at Mandalay, right? Because it looks like Mandalay is going to be the near future of Evo kind of going forward. And they sort of have established that like, Luxor/Mandalay area is sort of where Evo is going to be. And there's a tram that you can take that goes from that area, like the Luxor-ish area, to the Strip a bit more, right? And I think it outputs you right close to the Strip where like the New York is. And me and JJ would take some opportunity just like one night when I don't have any responsibilities or something like that, just to go away from Evo and to start walking up the Strip, but not outside, right? Because the cool part about that spot is that you don't have to walk like the streets. You can literally walk up like half of the Strip through hotels only.
Yeah.
And it's a really fun, enjoyable like walk, like either finding some place to eat or like some drinks that might be available through there, or just perusing each and every casino and finding out which one is smoking, which one is non-smoking, as you're going through them. It's actually really enjoyable. And you have to walk back, obviously, but it's one of those things that like doesn't cost a lot of money. You get to peruse a whole bunch of what that part of the city has to offer. And you really enjoyed it, like had an absolutely great time, because for somebody like me, I'm doing so much talking and so much greeting and so much of that throughout like an Evo tournament that it's all encompassing. And I just have to I need to get away. I have to get away.
Yeah.
I'm not I might seem like I'm a social person, but I'm not a social person. And I'm like trying my best to be that. So I'm like, I need to let's go this way for a little while.
So that's like Excalibur is connected to like New York, I think.
I think
like
so,
they're
yeah.
across the street, and then that's connected to...
You cross a bridge and then you just peruse.
I did that exact same walk. Me and Leanna were like, okay, let's go get breakfast one morning while we're there during Evo. And we're like, okay, well, let's pick up some things like water and stuff and just some stuff for our room. And we're like, oh, there's a Target like halfway, like, I don't know, a 10-minute walk away from where we were. And then it's like we almost died during that walk.
Oh, good.
Because it was the middle of the day. It was like noon.
Oh, so it was like 130.
It's hot.
And it was outside away from the hotels. So we're just like, we're getting into the Target, like crawling on the floor. And like, let's just buy some water real quick because that's... Because Evo always happens in summer. If you go to, I've been to Vegas in January and it's fine.
Yeah.
It's like totally fine weather-wise.
August, July.
Don't go.
You're on
Don't go to
Mars.
Evo.
I have a funny story that sort of connects to that because at Evo 2012, right? We're getting into Evo tournament stories now. And my stories revolve around tournaments, right? It might not be like, I did so good at this, but we wanted to do a very special episode of Assist Me because it was our first panel at Evo 2012. So it was a ton of people there, and we wanted to do like a weird, like our Twitch live events, like a weird live action sort of like collides with the panel's sort of video experience where it was like Assist Me Vegas edition. So we filmed all of this stuff pre Evo to make it seem like it's in Vegas. And then I'm like, all right, so when we're in Vegas, I'm going to bring my editing rig. I brought all my computers and shit to like the actual like Vegas room where I would edit this stuff together. And I'm like, we will film Doom and Wesker making their way to Evo when we're actually there. And then we start realizing it's going to be so goddamn hot because this guy's in like carbon fiber full suit, then Doom is Doom, so he's always like hot behind the cloak. And I'm like, okay, so here's the thing. We get up at 7 a.m. where there's nobody around. and we essentially shoot Doom and Wesker running around the Vegas, because this is when it was at Caesars, I believe. It was at Caesars Palace, right? Was it at Caesars Palace?
Caesars parking lot.
Yeah.
We were at Caesars for a while. Yeah, it was at Caesars in 2012.
Caesars, yeah.
And then them running through Caesars Palace and running through the outside, and we had to film it at a very specific time of day when there was not that many people, and it was not blazing hot, but it was still 95 goddamn degrees, even in the morning. So yeah, we got that filmed and put together within like 4 hours, filmed, and then I edited it, and then we went to the panel and showed it, and then they ran in right as soon as the video ended.
Oh, that's
it was
awesome.
So goddamn hot. It was insane.
Yeah. So that's the other thing, like, people have to worry about for Evo. And like, I mean, CO happens in Florida
It's
too.
just as bad.
It's just it's swampier though.
It's just
like
swampier, yeah.
Yeah, it's just swampier.
CEOs like Evo in many ways, where like a lot of my opportunities to go to these tournaments, especially over those years, like the mid 2010s, I took and jumped at the opportunity, because what's at CEO, you know, it's in Orlando, Florida. So a hop, skip, and a jump, we were going to Universal and like Disney World and stuff like that, and that was great. I was like, oh my god, this is awesome. So that's like, you got to think of like, when you're going to a tournament, what are like the caveats that sort of come with it, and what are the benefits of like what's around there? You know, what can you go to?
Especially if you're bringing like a significant other, or like even just a friend that just wants to come with you and stuff.
Yeah.
When I mentioned WrestleMania before, and that was in Florida, and Jabali was just hanging around like wrestlers and doing things. And yeah, we saw Orlando, and we're like, we have to go to the Terminator 2 ride before they close it. Because every few years they're about to close it to make way for like a fucking Harry Potter toilet or something. And we were like, we have to go. And I'm like, so glad I saw that, because like a year or two later, they actually closed it for good. And I was like, oh, I'm glad my eyes saw these things. So I mean, I've been to Chicago before, so like I know what's there. But are there any other like, you know, big tournaments that you guys have been to, or maybe Justin, like specifically, where you're like, oh, that was a really good one that maybe people don't know about that much? Because we're talking about like kind of the big three, but
yeah. I feel like there's just so many tournaments in general. One that I really do love going, and I unfortunately missed it this year just because I can't travel to America at the moment, is Texas Showdown.
Yeah,
Texas Showdown is like is actually one of the longest running tournaments since like before I was even going to tournaments as well. And the best part is they really pay homage to like where they came from, meaning like they run a lot of modern games plus all of the old games that they always run tournaments for, because there's a really huge community around that area in Texas that plays a lot of the old stuff. So they make sure to kind of like keep like kind of like the people from like the old guard and also the people the new guard. So that's kind of what makes that tournament fun. I would say it's not really like con level. It's definitely more for like the hardcore scene, where it's like, you know, just only a tournament. There's not much to do besides tournament. Obviously, go out to eat food. But just for me, I just since I just love playing the old games, it's just a good tournament for me, for my demographic, to just be there just to play in those tournaments.
Cool. As you were just at Canada Cup a few weeks ago too. How was that in general? I mean, I know how you did, but like, did you have fun? I'm assuming.
Canada Cup is usually kind of like a chill event, where it's just like the tournament organizer just wants to get you drunk while playing in tournament. Literally, that's what
still run it.
Yeah, exactly.
I know
he's
exactly
the
what
one
you're talking
that's
about.
doing that. Yep. Because the whole weekend, the whole 3 days, I just always had a drink in my hand while playing or on stream or whatever.
While playing.
Yeah.
It's like on the arcade stick, just gyrating and splashing everywhere.
No, I need those hats, like those little beer hats. You know what I mean? Just
yeah. Saves time. That's an intimidation factor right there. One guy comes up and he's just like, he's pounding them away, and you're like, well, he's confident, isn't he?
Yeah. So yeah, I would say there's those type of tournaments, but normally there's a lot of just tournaments everywhere. There's like majors in Philadelphia, from Big E. There's East Coast Throwdown from New Jersey. There's just, you know, even now I would say because of the pandemic, there's so many online tournaments as well too, for people that just want to just stay home and not have to travel, right? Like Spooky did it, ICFC is doing it with like Tenno Media. There's even tournaments around the world. Like there's always a tournament somewhere I think around the world when it comes down to the FGC.
Well, that's what I was going to mention for you, Justin, was that I think last year when we were at like peak of pandemic, right? And we were still in the unknowing of like how all of this stuff really works. You set yourself up with a challenge. And I think people forget, but you absolutely hate online and online tournaments. Like people are like used to it now because of like you're the content lord, right? So you had to start making content and stuff like that. But I remember you would never join. I remember us even trying to get you to get into our Ultimate Marvel 3 big Twitch tournament, and it's like this is online through Parsec. But Justin joined, and it's like I don't know, man.
I don't like playing fighting games in online tournaments with bad netcode tournaments.
Yeah.
So if your tournament has bad netcode, then like, or your game, or just in general just has bad netcode, I wouldn't join. Like Parsec, Marvel 3 is like playable, but still like very, very different, very hard. And I personally just didn't like playing on it. So that's why I didn't join that one. But all the tournaments I did enter for when I set my goal for 100 online tournaments were mainly for tournaments that had great netcode, aka like Fightcade or Guilty Gear Strive for the most part. But in general, it's just kind of like, it was like, because since that was the second year of the pandemic, the first year I didn't enter no tournament whatsoever for online, but everyone had online tournaments. But then I had a lot of people, especially just from like my community, really like, message me and saying, we really do miss you entering tournaments. Is there any way would you change and think about entering tournaments for 2019 or like the following year? So that's kind of why I made that goal of trying to win 100 online tournaments in 1 year. And I mean, it was fun because one, it's just free content. Two, it's just like people wanted to watch me play. And three, I'm just home in my underwear, just playing some fighting games,
drinking beers,
being comfortable. So it's definitely nice that we kind of we were able to adapt, because offline tournaments was the whole FGC, right? Every week was some offline CPT, Capcom Pro Tour Major or Tekken World Tour Major from somewhere around the world, and then now we were able to adapt that to online, where even companies like the Arc System Tour was mostly all held online, as well as just many other tournaments made by the community, even Evo as well too. And I think it brought a lot of people back to fighting games and also wanting to actually go to offline tournaments now, because I think Combo Breaker, for example, that's happening this when you watch this episode, it already passed a week before. It's their biggest tournament yet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple of things because of that. It's also Combo Breaker, the first one that's been in 2+ years, because of the pandemic. They're actually standing strong and going for it. I hope, as if this thing, goes live, I hope everyone is staying safe and no one got sick or anything like that, because there's always going to be the risk of that happening. But because it is like the first big one, like the first very large scale, like tournament event of that size, everybody's showing up, and Guilty Gear is arguably one of the biggest games there. I think it is going to go down as being one of the biggest. And it's like the perfect storm situation, where there is a lot of people introduced to Guilty Gear because it was the perfect fighting game for the pandemic at the time. And now people actually hopefully get to show that skill in a live setting, where the situation will be very different, because offline Guilty Gear, even though rollback netcode is amazing, it is still not the same as offline. Your reaction time is upped by like 2 to 4 frames, so it's a big difference.
And just like the atmosphere of being at like a live event, like I'd say affects people, right?
No, that's a great point, is that a lot of people are used to being in their comfort zone when it comes to fighting games. And being in the comfort zone is like you with your own stick around your own friends and your own situation with your own camaraderie, right? But the people, and Justin can absolutely back this up, the people that are really good are the ones that are able to play under the most volatile of circumstances and still perform. Like, are you using your arcade stick? Are you playing on an arcade machine that you're used to? Like, you had to adapt to all these weird things and people heckling you and all this crazy shit. So that's a big part of it, if you can hold yourself strong, even when all that crazy shit is happening.
Yeah, there was like two instances, for example, like way back in the day, before there was like, proper seating. People would just literally
Crowd.
huddle up like a crowd, like literally just
Yeah.
huddle, like looking below your shoulder.
Yeah.
You could feel their breath on your neck.
You could
while
hear a
playing
video camera
tournaments.
right next to you, like next to your ear. You're like, Jesus Christ, man.
Yeah. Yeah, you could literally just like feel everything because it's like the heat, all the body heat, and you're just sitting there playing in the tournament set. Like stuff like that is kind of crazy because obviously now it's more mandated and it's a lot ordered. There's a lot of space between the players now. But recently I was just reading up like on just kind of like the comments, everything, and pretty much for Guilty Gear Strive at Texas Showdown, one player just couldn't perform at all and like just pretty much choked throughout the whole entire tournament because of like the crowd just being like so loud and heckling. And it's because probably that person was probably started playing fighting games during
They're
the
used to
pandemic,
their comfort zone.
right? Playing at home with the underwear, no loud noises, so much space, and they just couldn't handle it. So that's definitely gonna be a very big problem that a lot of people will still have and will have in the future, especially if you're coming from an online era and learning how to play fighting games and wanting to go to these events.
Yeah.
Related but unrelated, like something like that kind of happened to me where it's like I spent like the last 2 years watching every movie, experiencing every game in my home, right? And if I'm watching something I'm not really liking or whatever, it's like I can take my phone out, I can do whatever. It's in my house. And like for 2 years did not go to a single movie theater. Then when we went to go see a movie, and it was unfortunately Venom 2, which I hated.
That movie sucked, man.
I love you, Max. Good. And I hated it so much, but I couldn't look at my phone. I'm in a theater, whatever, and I didn't have anything to distract me, and I just started getting anxiety attack. Like I was stuck. Well, I'm not like trying to like
stuck with this horse shit.
yeah, I'm not trying to like make it on Venom 2. Like even if it was a movie I was really, really liking, or a thing, media, and let's say there's just a part I didn't like, or something, I still had no outlet. Like I can't do anything. I'm basically like I have to be here for the rest of the movie. And I did walk out for a second and come back in, like I went to the bathroom, whatever. But it was still weird. It was like it's never happened to me before. And then when I went to go see like Spider-Man, I love that movie so much. So in theaters, so that was fine. But when you're like, I can understand like a tournament player who's like maybe been playing for like the last year and a half, like in their home, and then going to like an offline event and having that sort of reaction. So that's interesting.
So here's a big one, especially when old arcade tournaments, and once again, Justin can probably echo this, is that you'd be going to your arcade, right? Or you're used to your sticks and your machine. And then you'd have to, and a lot of these old machines were not these Japanese like Sanwa sticks and stuff like that. They were these big ass bat top classic SF2 type things. Even on Marvel 2, they literally had concave buttons where people were just like breaking calluses on their hands, mashing Storm Super and shit.
Yep.
And
that.
So when you went to another arcade to compete and there was a tournament, you had no idea what that machinery was going to be like. Right. So you'd go and you'd be expected to do well. And then you realize like, oh God, suddenly this bat stick is a super tight one. Like you flick it and it pops back. You're like, okay, so there's no looseness to this shit at all. Getting used to that kind of stuff, right? Like the really gritty arcade nature of how it was in the 90s and the early 2000s is a huge part of your adaptability and how you can adapt to your situation and be like, okay, what do I do? Because this is now not what I'm used to. How do I adapt to this,
Yeah, arcade tournaments were very brutal just because there's so many things, like you said, sticks feels different, the machine breaking down. And speaking of machine breaking down, there was a Marvel Capcom 2 tournament that I entered in the year 2001. Right at the break, 8 on the break, and this is when like Ricky Ortiz came down to play, and so many people around America came down to play at this tournament for the game. What you know about Marvel Capcom 2 started on Sunday at 10 a.m., right? And it was a 500-man tournament with 4 arcade machines. And that tournament ended Monday, 11 a.m.
Well, I thought you were going to say that tournament's still going.
No, I mean, it might as well be. But Monday, 11 a.m., I was sleeping under like the basketball games, just like napping and like waiting for them to call my name. And
This is a great story.
And there's so many like machines they just kept breaking down, or they're just like people complain, oh, like the direction is it doesn't work. So like we can't tell if you're lying or whatever. So they, the technicians, I don't see anything wrong with it. They're like, no, keep testing it. So one match could last for like an hour, right? And this is a 500-man double elimination tournament, bro. So I'm just here like literally at like 10 a.m. on Monday morning and just waiting to play. But then they're like, the cabinet keeps breaking down. But eventually we were able to finally get through the whole tournament. And I won that tournament, but man, it was just literally a 24-hour Mars Capcom 2 tournament. That was just kind of crazy to
How
me.
much did you even win for that?
$2.
No,
Was it like
I think
a couple
it was
grand?
like 400. No, it was like $450.
Oh man,
Because it was $5 entry fee.
So here's a funny thing I have to make people like sort of realize is that what Justin's saying is essentially what people were playing for many years, right?
Yeah.
Like a few $100 was like a good payout for a lot of these tournaments and event, and even like big things like Evo. You were. And I go back and I think of like the Evos that I went to when I first started going to Evo, which was like Third Strike was the biggest tournament, and there was like 300 people, and it was like, holy shit, this is like the biggest fighting game tournament ever type of shit. And it was like, oh, there's so many people here for Third Strike now. But then I started to think about it, and I'm like, man, minus like venue fees and everything like that, these guys are getting maybe like $1,500 to $2,000. Like that's it for like the world championship. The overall prize pools for fighting game tournaments for arguably like almost 25 years were very small for a long time. And then
like
eventually
compared to the amount of people that were
well it seemed like comparatively, like this is just one thing to show like kind of how niche like fighting games technically are and how many people, like, because it felt like everything to us, especially like me and Justin, like when you're going to SRK or IRC and you're talking to these people and discussing all this stuff and how like focused and tight it actually was, because the prize pools were always ridiculously small. Even when Street Fighter 4 started happening, it got bigger, right? It definitely started to increase in size. But I mean, winning an Evo for Street Fighter 4, I don't think was outpaying 10 grand. No, it was not. Even if Daigo was winning, he was not getting like even 5 grand, I think, even when it seemed to be at its biggest. It was only when like Capcom showed up and started offering big payouts for like the 25th anniversary tournament when that one first happened. And then other companies started following suit and they started to actually put prize pools in there. But to be like, has anyone ever won like $1 million from like a fighting game tournament? I don't think so. I don't think it's
not
ever
from one fighting game tournament, probably not.
Yeah, not like a tournament series or anything. Like I don't think any specific, it has never gotten that big.
None that we know about, but maybe there's like these dark kumites that are underground that like you get to win Dubai. Some guy's house. Yeah. Yeah, like a high rollers type thing, like that could exist, right?
I mean, there's a lot of those random tournaments, kind of like comic book store tournaments where it's like $500 for first place, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And then a lot of tournament players will keep it a secret.
Yes.
Just because
you don't want competition to show up.
Because
I absolutely did that.
Right?
Respect that.
So, I mean, the one thing is that, and I wanted to echo this, the prize pools weren't crazy. Like you weren't making a crazy amount of money. It was just fun because you were essentially like hustling, right? You were hustling your money you're making your money by playing video games, which was amazing, right? At any point, if you were getting paid out, whenever I won tournaments, like I remember constantly being flabbergasted because I always, like, my goal was always to just play games in front of like an audience of people. That was always my personal passion with arcade games or DDR or anything, right? So when I would win a tournament, this dude would come up and hand me like a wad, like a crunched up was like dollar bills and there's change and shit, and he would just put it in my hand, and I'm just like,
wow,
oh yeah, that's right. Like, oh shit. But for a lot of people, like this was their for someone that wasn't a casual tournament goer like me, this was like their thing, right? So Justin, I would love to hear your perspective on this. It wasn't about just making money from tournament winnings. It was about making money from where the money actually was, money matches.
Yeah. So because like I went to tournaments just like everywhere, right? And the prizes for usually each tournament for like if I won like Marvel 2 or Third Strike out of like a major, it would be like $300 bucks,
which is nothing,
right?
That
Which
covers
is nothing,
that
right?
covers like your stay.
Yeah, pretty much. So then a lot of times we would just money match people because you would talk a lot of crap on SRK forums or IRC, and you would just set up money matches with like other players for like $20, $50. So ultimately, that's kind of where a lot of your money gets made. Like I remember going to final round, which is a big tournament in Atlanta, and the first time I went there, I had because I never played the South, or the South never played me. I literally had those like Trapper Keeper notebooks, and I brought it with me. And then because I had all these names of like, okay, you want to play me in the first of 3 for 20, blah 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 blah. It was a full page, like literally like 50 lines worth. And then I would just search for people and be like, hey, are you this person? Are you
Hunting
this
them
person?
and their money down.
Yeah, literally. I'm like, are you this person?
Are you Toe Sucker 69? I'm here to beat you.
I'm here to get your money, bitch.
Yeah, it was literally just a notebook full of paper. I have a picture of it. I forgot someone took it, but it's just me sitting in like a car with my notebook, and I had a wad of just 20s spread out, and then I'm wearing like the most baggiest clothes, like a thug.
Wait, is this an actual picture that was posted on SRK?
Yeah,
I've seen this picture. 100% I've seen this picture. You're like wearing the most mid 2000s ish looking attire.
I'm pretty sure you could Google it, but it's just me have a smug look and just me holding a wad of cash.
He looks like he came from Def Jam.
I was about to say.
He's right out of Fight for New York.
Just going through like his list of people he's knocked off. All right, who's next? Goldberg over here.
Yeah, it really is a picture though for that.
That's amazing. I don't think Max has, but I wanted to know, like, you've done tournaments in Japan, maybe Europe.
Yeah, I've been to, I would say, like, my goal obviously for going to tournaments is not like Max said, it wasn't really for the money. It was like how Max wanted to play in front of people. For me, it was life experiences. Like I wanted to travel around the world and then do tourist shit beside, after the tournament, before the tournament. So that was like my goal, is to create all these type of memories and have my eyes see all these different sites that probably a lot of people would never really get a chance to do just because it's so hard, right? So I went to tournaments in Australia, Southeast Asia, Asia in general, Japan, Korea, Europe, and South America as well too. So it was definitely pretty awesome to see kind of like the different type of cultures of FGC, because one, I would say in the Western area, we have tournaments down packed, like in terms of how to run a tournament. Even like, America does a really good job at that, but around the world, it's so like maybe 10 years behind of like how people would run tournaments in like America. But the community though, it's so tight, it's so passionate, because they don't really win money, or they don't have a chance to win that much money, especially in South America scenes or some parts of Asia. They just do it because they love fighting games, right? And I think that's the beauty of it, that most people that do play fighting games are people that really do love just to play fighting games with other people.
And I think Justin was at this tournament too, but these opportunities that you get to like go to places and you're like, man, we got to take this. Like if you can take me, and like I usually my requirement was like, you have to take me and my wife, right? And you have to pay for their accommodations and sometimes a friend. There's a little tournament that took place in 2000, I believe it was 13. Hallowed be thy name, but it was the legendary VXG. And this thing took place in St. Martin, right? So an island out in the middle of the ocean, in the Atlantic Ocean, and they covered the accommodations for a lot of people, and then also didn't cover the accommodations for a lot of people. I'm hoping, Justin, because I think you were at this one, right? The last VXG.
So I had a terrible story for that one.
Oh no!
So
did you get compensated or no?
So I did.
Okay.
So I was able to bring my ex at the time and my dog, right? And then
you have to pay for my dog's accommodations.
Yeah, for reals. So we get our own like I guess like room, our stay, and while we're just there, bro, like the main person, he just left me hanging for like hours, and there was like the electricity just didn't work in the room, and he just left me there for hours and hours, and then literally like there was just bugs everywhere because I gave my dog food, and literally when I looked, there's just bugs all over like the dog food. So I was just so pissed already. And then eventually a different couple just entered our room.
What?
So I was just like, bro, I'm so pissed. And then my dog got sick. She started throwing up everywhere. So I literally was like, I'm going home right now. And I booked a flight and just went back home, literally on the same day.
That's what I remember you sort of being there. That's why like I was asking about that, because I was like, I remember you being there, but then like not. And so that's what happened. You ended up just piecing the fuck out.
Yeah.
Wow. That's elsewhere in the world though, is there like one that stood out as like really awesome, like a good memory of like the
that's a good question. Yeah, like what's best tournament memories?
Because that's a negative one, but do you have like a really like positive one?
Let's see. So I guess it first it started from a negative, but then it became a positive. Going to Australia. Australia is at the time was a 24-hour flight from New York. So I was stuck on a plane for 24 hours. And once I landed, obviously, customs says, "Excuse me, sir, we have to search you." So I always get bodied by that. And while that was happening, he looked at me and said, "Inside your DS, your Nintendo DS, there's crack in it." And I was like, "What do you mean crack? Like drugs?" He's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, what is he saying? Like, you're saying there's drugs inside my Nintendo DS? And then I said, "Open it. Like, if you think there's drugs, open it." And he looked at me and looked at his coworker and he said, "You're good to go." And I'm like, I'm so confused on what just happened right here. But that was like the negative. After that, just like going to like the tournament, like the opera house and the zoo and just all the tourist stuff. It was super fun. They had like 20 games. It was kind of like a convention because there was like booths there and they had like arcades and they also had console setups. So it was just amazingly fun because I never would have thought that I would ever meet anybody from Australia playing fighting games just because it's so far. So I would say that's kind of just like a really fun memory for me.
And you have to have really good rollback net code to play someone from Australia online, let alone just the time difference.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because there's just like so many times where you could have a really good experience and also a shady experience or a bad experience. Like one time, we were supposed to go to a tournament in North Carolina, and one of our Marvel 2 friends, because FGC is poverty, right? Actually, came on the Amtrak train and without a ticket, right? So he's trying to smuggle himself. He tried to smuggle himself into the train, right? So then now we didn't know that they recheck your tickets again. So he's like, "Oh shit, I'm screwed."
It was some Indiana Jones 3 situation. No ticket.
Yeah, what are we supposed to do? So it was like one of those long seats, right? Those long benches, right? So we literally put him under the floor, like on the floor, and we covered him with bags and jackets, right? So I'm literally, so let's say I'm sitting down, and he's literally under me, but there's padding, so he doesn't feel like we're squishing him, and we're obviously trying not to like step on him, right? Ultimately, this is a 13-hour train ride.
13 hours.
Yeah, 13-hour train ride. So he's stuck there for 13 hours, no bathroom, no food, and unfortunately, I had this orange juice, and I spilled it. I spilled it on top of him. So then. So first,
did you forget he was there?
I forgot he was there. But the crazy part was when I spilled it, I looked down. I definitely didn't say a word. I'm like, I'm not gonna say it's me or anything. I want to see what happens when he gets up.
You guys just looked at each other right in the eyes. He's like, "You did that to me." He's like, "I did that to you."
So when he got up, because we got to our stop, he was like, "Yo, did someone spill orange juice on me?" And no one replied because I didn't reply. So maybe if he watches this podcast, he'll know that it's me finally.
Nobody replied.
But I definitely didn't reply. But then after that, we thought about, so what are we going to do on you going back? And then he said, "Bro, don't worry about it. I'm gonna money match everybody just to get my ticket back, and that's what he did. He got second in the tournament, and he money matched everybody to go back to New York without having to get back on the floor again.
Jesus.
Oh my god,
that's a good story. I have a weird one from when I was like, I don't know, I might have been 15 or 16. Marvel 2 was already out on the Dreamcast, it was a new game. And I had heard of a tournament in this wonderful part of the earth called Bakersfield in Southern California. No. And this place is just nature's asshole in the middle of nowhere, right? So my mom drops me off at this store, right? So she can go shopping and like pick up groceries and stuff, because I lived in like the mountains. So we had to like take ventures. We had to take the Oregon Trail to go get to get food.
Don't get dysentery.
So she dropped me off right at a little game store that had a Marvel 2 tournament, and I ended up getting second or third. I can't remember, but I did get winnings, right? Actually, no, it was store fucking credit. So I got a copy of Virtua Tennis on the Dreamcast, and that was it. But I met at that time, I sort of got exposed to a completely other FGC, which was the Bakersfield fighting game community. And there's a couple of guys that were talking to me because I was pretty decent at the game. And we just started hitting it up and chatting and talking about how people actually make money off playing video games and stuff like that. This is like 1999, maybe 2000. And all these like crazy things that sound absolutely foreign, crazy, bizarre, and weird to somebody that's from like the year 2000. And he's like, yeah, we should go down to the mall and see who's there and play Marvel 2. So without telling my mom, right, I just jumped in these guys' car who were like maybe 18 or 19. I don't know if I ever told her this story. She probably would have fucking killed me.
Stranger danger, dude.
But I mean, they weren't like that much older than me, but they could drive. So we were just chilling it and talking, and went to the mall, right? I got to show off some cool Strider combos in the mall. Some guys were like, hey, this kid's pretty good type of stuff, and all this nice camaraderie. And then they took me back to the store and dropped me off. So nothing nefarious happened. Wow. It was just like, in retrospect, I think of like what I did, and I was like, God damn, that was stupid. Like, wow, that was really dumb. Like, just to jump in some dude's car.
But you got to show off cool Strider combos.
I did, and I was
well
really
worth
happy.
it.
I was super cool with it.
So crazy story here. One
crazier than the orange juice.
One, if anyone's watching that's under 18 or a kid or whatever, never lie to your parents. Don't be like us. But I also did lie to my family. I was at Chinatown Fair playing some video games.
You do.
Yep, as I do. And then this guy named Alex came up, right? And he said, hey kid, you're good. Do you want to go to a tournament? And I was like, yeah, sure. Like, how far is there? And what's the prize? So he's saying, there's a lot of money on the line, a few $100 for like Marvel 2 and CVS 1. So I was like, all right, cool. So I jump into his car, right? I don't even know his last name. I just know him as Alex at the arcade. He plays Ken. I jump in his car, and then I just doze off, right? I doze off, and this is probably around like 11 a.m. I doze off, and I wake up, and it's like 5 p.m., right? And then we're still in the car, and I'm like, where are we? He's like, oh, we're almost there. We're already in Maryland, and I'm like, Maryland. And I live in New York, right? So he's like, yeah, where are we going? He's like, we're going to Virginia, right, for a tournament. I'm like, oh, so you didn't want to, I mean, I guess I could have asked that, but you didn't want to mention to me that you were going to take me on like a 5-hour car ride to go to Virginia, right? And then we get there to this arcade called Game Time USA.
Luckily, there's a tournament, by the way. Yeah. Luckily, there is a tournament. Which was close.
And then we got there super late, so I had to start from the losers bracket, literally from like the losers bracket at the tournament for both games, right? Because they were holding off my matches, and they had to DQ me from winners. So I eventually won the tournament for both games, and I got like $600. And to me, as a 14-year-old kid, I was like, wow, this is fantastic. This is like a dream come true, right? And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, so can we go home now? Because at least like I had to call my parents and tell them, oh yeah, I'm gonna be late. I'm at my friend's house in New Jersey, blah blah blah. So they were cool with it, right? But I said I was in New Jersey. And then after I hung up and I was getting ready to go to the car doesn't work. It just tanks. Like it just completely doesn't start. Anything. The engine's dead. Right. So then this is around 10 p.m. and I'm like, well, how can I get home? I'm 14 years old. Didn't have a cell phone. I had a beeper. They're like, well, it's either you wait till Tuesday for my car to get repaired. This is Saturday night, by the way. And I'm a 14-year-old, still going to school. So you want me to skip school in a different state and then go home on Tuesday. So I was like, is there any other option? And they said there's Greyhound. Right. So I took the Greyhound by myself at 14 years old at like 2 a.m. going to New York. And then coming home around 8 a.m. and I opened the door, the lights is on, and I'm like, oh my god, that ass beating is about to come. And best believe I definitely got so much in trouble from that tournament because I think I came home the next day and they still didn't know I went to Virginia though. I stuck steady and true of I was at my friend's house in New Jersey and I fell asleep and I'm sorry. So they did not get, because if I said Virginia, and I probably wouldn't even be here right now.
So tell your family to skip this episode of TripleKO, basically, right?
Yeah. But yeah,
how much did the Greyhound cost?
It was like $50.
Oh,
okay,
cheap.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like the worst travel possible next to biking.
It is.
So it's gonna be cheap.
Just hitchhike there, Yeah. There's a tournament I just popped in my head that I did not go to because it was the same weekend as a PAX East, and I was showing off a game I was working on at that time, so I had to go to that. But I really wanted to go to the KI World Cup. I know Max was there. Did you go to that, Justin, or no?
No, I never been to one, but I heard it's like a pretty cool event because there's like this one guy that has like the hugest KI collection. So he brings like his whole KI museum to the tournament.
Yeah.
Oh, they're going to say Max.
K, I actually brought a whole bunch of my stuff that he didn't have, K0. And I talk to him all the time, and we're actually KI aficionados, and we'll like, do you have this yet? Do you have this yet? Like, did you bid on it? Did I bid on it? Like type of stuff.
So how did that event, like, how was that? Because I think I asked you briefly, like the weekend after, like, oh, how was that? I didn't get to like see much. I caught a bit of it like on stream. So
if this was the 2016 one, right, which was in like, it wasn't at like the big venue thing yet, which was the 2017 one. In 2016, it was at this little like corner of a place in San Antonio. And I'd argue that is like the most FGC sort of like, this is the community sort of event I've ever been to. Like just everybody here, and it wasn't a ton of people, probably like less than like 100 to 200, but everybody here came from all corners of the world that just absolutely loved Killer Instinct, and they were here for it. And it was the devs, it was the Microsoft guys, just all crammed into this little like ballroom type of thing, very small, in like a shopping mall.
Okay, so I was thinking the 2017 one for sure, because that was the one that was like really advertised and had a bunch of shit going on.
Yes, that one was okay. Like that one definitely looked better from the outside. But I'd say personally, like the 2016 one where everyone's like sort of crammed into this little space and it looks bigger than it is type of thing was the epitome of like what a community comes together that just loves the shit out of something. It was the one that I think I hosted the actual event itself. So when I was like walking around getting interviews with people, showing off the Killer Instinct collections, like introducing like the players and the top 8s and stuff like that. And then there was commentators, and I commentated every once in a while. But that event was truly magical. And they also demoed and showed off the seasonal changes to season 3 of KI, how everything was changing. So that was the one where we got everybody's reaction that was in the crowd to like, here's how Jago's changing, here's how Saprolf was changing. Everyone was like, what the, like, people are just like losing their minds at like what's happening to the game type of stuff live. It was so it was so beneficial for the game and so cool to see like all of that happen live. I absolutely loved it.
That's awesome, because the only thing I had going on that was similar to that was when I was at the PAX East previously of 2016. That's when they're showing off Hisako for the first time, and I was in the room for that. I was like, oh my god, this is so awesome. Because up until then the characters were still silhouettes.
Yeah.
You love that, Max, huh? You love that when characters are silhouettes, huh? Good
yeah,
time.
especially since I made those. Since I created Broccoli Man inadvertently. No one said that he looked like a big husk of broccoli.
Legend of Broccoli Man began with you. It's crazy.
So I think to wrap this stuff up, I want to talk about possibly like best tournament memories / experience. So, I mean, for all of you guys, I'll just go around and start with Justin. Like, what's your best like tournament memory experience sort of thing that you can recall?
I guess I would say the best experience I ever had going to a tournament was probably my first time ever going to Japan. And that would be in 2005. And even though we talked about this, and the reason why I went there was for a very bad game that I qualified for that we talked about a few times, Capcom Fighting Jam. I won a qualifier for Capcom Fighting Jam, and that got me 2 free plane tickets to go to Japan. So even though the game was terrible, I'm very
not
happy
all
for that
bad.
game. You know, it's all not. So it was just a super fun experience. First time ever going to Japan, just because it's kind of like my brain just exploded, right? With like all this like culture. I love Japanese culture. I love anime. I love video games, and fighting games are taken so seriously there as a community. Even going to any arcade, there's always somebody that just runs the arcade as like the best player, right? And like as like a boss. So, and in the actual tournament itself, it felt like it was like something like crazy, like a Super Bowl, because Super Battle Opera, which was the tournament that was called, they had like this huge arena. The intros were super sick. Everyone came out like kind of like on some like, you know, like wrestling entrance and everything, and it just had so much energy. And because of that, I feel like it never was able to replace, like, even up to this day, a tournament that was like Super Battle Opera, just because of the amount of pure production of just like everybody coming out and the announcements. It just felt so right. And I think that was still probably my favorite experience, just in general, just because I was able to experience so much stuff during that trip. Just
for perspective, Justin went to these things called Super Battle Opera. It was SBO, right? And what what we would do in the early 2000s, because SBO was like usually where players would hold tech and then they would show it off at SBO and win the tournament with it, because this was like the big esports spectacle. They would make VHS/DVDs of this tournament, right? And they would sell them in Japan. So long story short, eventually these made them their way around to the US, and people would essentially record the DVDs off of like a VHS tape to a VHS tape. So I still have several old SBO DVDs / recorded tapes of like SBO 2001, 2000 and stuff like that, because it was the only place you could actually see these players play these games and to see what they did, right? Even though it was like brutally low quality 140p type shit, you can get like, was that a roll cancel? Like, what is going on? Because that's where it was first shown off, you know? So it was cool. It was really, and Justin was actually a part of that for Fighting Jam.
Yeah, and there was no YouTube, right? Because there was no YouTube, no Twitch, no streaming service. So it was either you had to be at the tournament there with like those giant cameras that you're recording on like kind of handy cam, or you, like Max said, you buy the DVDs from the actual tournament itself.
The tape of a tape.
Evo sold DVDs for like what, since B5.
Yeah, because James Chen was the one putting those together, I think, right?
Yeah, I think James Chen was the one that was making sure these get the DVD. So they were able to sell so much of that, because like if you weren't there, you would be on the forums hitting just refresh to see who won the tournament.
Yes. Yeah. How about you, Matt? Is any specific like big tournament things that immediately pop to your mind, or good fun memories, even on the viewership end?
There's this really, I'm really sorry, I forget the details of this. A tournament organizer asked me years and years ago, like 10 years plus, like, can you create intros for when our games like start their like brackets or whatever, or top 32 maybe. So, you know, like some tournaments will have like little video packages, like kind of showing off the game, and they wanted stuff about the dumb Street Fighter and Capcom cartoons, like the stupid American series, and one for Darkstalkers as well. And I'm trying to remember what tournament it was, but like, again, it was 10 years ago. And this is when I was doing those things, making those montages of like Street Fighter and Guile just going Bison. And I thought that was so cool that it would be used in that way. So that was really
to
neat.
hype people up.
Yeah, exactly. That was its entire purpose. But now it's like that email is probably long lost to the digital ether. But I thought that was really neat. And certainly, I've already mentioned Evo a couple times. But going into the Mandalay Bay Arena, like the where all the big screens, I always get wowed going into any sports auditorium arena thing because they don't do it often, obviously. So when I go in there, I'm just like, wow, like everything just mystifies me. I'm so amazed.
Yeah.
So being there for the first Evo I'd gone to, looking at the finals, I think it was 2017 maybe. And I was just awestruck by that. Obviously, I'm not a tournament player, so I don't have much experience or memories in there. But like those two moments kind of stand out for me.
And for me, I think the big thing, and related to tournaments, but not like directly related to competing, was especially like Evo and our panels, because our panels ended up being like some of the most visited panels that they had at Evo, and getting these like congregated things where we could just literally see the people that have been watching and following all the stuff we've been doing for so long, and have it to be all fighting game focused, over so many years was so incredibly cool. And we would always try to top one panel to the next, to the next, to the next, until it was just like exhausting and we just couldn't do it anymore. It's like, man, this is so much work now.
I think I remember that last year you were like rolling up posters in your hotel room all night before, and I
rolling
stopped
up posters, signing them, getting Benny to sign posters for like 16 hours or something like that, because we just gave them away for free.
I stopped in to like help for 10 minutes, and I'm like, okay, I'm exhausted already, but you guys have been doing it for like hours.
Did it for so long, dude.
Yeah.
But the big one was, I think, Evo 2015. And I was watching the finals because there was a fire marshal was saying that there was too many people at the, I think it was the Bally's. I think that's where we were.
Yeah, Bally's.
And that area wasn't that big. It was not as big as Caesar. So they were warning people that there's too many people in here for finals. And I was like, well, Jesus Christ, fuck it. Let's just go get a pizza and go back to the room, and I'll try to hook us, buy some Wi-Fi and watch it on the big screen in the room. And so we did that, and we had like all of our friends and all of us just like chilling on the bed eating pizza. And we were just watching finals, and then they get to the Cannon Awards, right? And James Chen and Ultra David win the Cannon Award. I'm like, oh shit, that's so awesome. Those guys absolutely deserve that, man. They've been doing this. James Chen's been writing game facts since like 1885. So I'm like, these guys absolutely deserve this shit. And then somebody in the room at the same time just like, what if you got one? I'm like, no way they would give me one. And then I'm not even kidding you, right after that, and they're like, our next Cannon Award goes to Maximilian. Where are you, Max? And I'm like, my heart sank to the bottom of my feet, and I was like, I'm such a piece of shit. I'm not there in that room. I fucking hate myself. I'm so mad. So at that point, I had to take Benny out as well, and I ran my ass all the way through. Like, there's 2 hotels you had to run through to get there, because it was Paris and Bally's. Ran my ass through it. I had to tell the guys that were saying, no, you can't come through the fire marshal. I'm like, they want me on the stage, bro. And I eventually made my way up there. They had sort of delayed the stream because people were crowding the hallways a bit too much. They had to be running room in case there was a goddamn fire. And that was my big opportunity to like make it to main stage Evo in some way, in a way that I was not prepared to, that I was unanticipating and never thought I would. And I got up there and potentially, in my opinion, like, or at least to me, like the best way it possibly could, because it was just, everyone was just super happy of all the stuff we had done, and just a celebration of that. It meant the world to me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
I was going to say the other like really brief thing I forgot, just at Evo, it's like I met, like kind of like how you mentioned your panels. I met people in real life that like I kind of knew on the internet. Like that's where I met Lythero for the first time. And I was like, man, you're tall and Irish. Like you're, and he's like, I'm Lythero. I'm like, Lee, like that. He's like, yeah. I'm like, you're just here. Like we bumped into each other at like the pool or something. It was so odd. And then we just hung out like for the rest of the day, everyone. And it's just a really cool meeting place because I think that was like a random year. He was just like, oh, I had the opportunity to go, so I just decided to go. So it's always cool, like any sort of convention. That's what's missed from online events is, you know, that connection and meeting people you otherwise wouldn't. So.
It's the same thing I miss E3, you know, of just like seeing these people you see like once a year and they're just super happy to see you. They want to show you all their cool shit, you know? Yeah, I miss it.
Fortunately, we'll be able to bring all of this to all of you when Devo becomes a thing in the next couple
Let's go, Devo.
Let's go, Devo!
Dank Evo.
I think Capcom does a great job when they're adding like collaboration characters.
I've never been able to extend this way.
Oh god, I gotta get the helmet on. Oh god. Wait a minute, our guy's a bad guy the whole time.
I just think it's crazy that I'm better at video games now than when I was like 16.
That is how you fix all the problems with all these games.
I feel like toy distribution is so different than it used to be.
They resculpted over the chest. They gave him a flak jacket over it.
I laugh when I see Among Us, but I'm not having fun inside. It's a reflex.
No, you took my joke!